Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
A teenager accused of the murder of an infant is brought before the magistrate's court.
Governor of the Central Bank John Roll weighs in on that recent Moody's rating.
Well, our news team takes students back to school.
Our news is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Vonique Tude. Topping news tonight, a 19-year-old man cried in the magistrate's court today after he was charged with the murder of an 8-month-old baby boy and the attempted murders of the child's parents. The three were shot inside their home in Baintown early Monday morning. Giorgio Bain was in court and has the details.
A teenager accused of the heinous crime of killing an infant and attempting to kill his parents earlier this week is brought before the magistrate's court by officers of the Central Detective Unit. 19-year-old Anthon Anthony Davis, also known as Bigger of Fleming Street, appeared before Magistrate Janine Weech Gomez in court number 8 just after 3 p.m. today. The young man was charged with the murder of 8-month-old Shelton Tinker Jr. and the attempted murder of his parents. It is alleged that on Monday, Davis did intentionally and unlawfully cause the death of 8-month-old Shelton Tinker Jr. It is also alleged that on Monday, Davis did intentionally and unlawfully attempt to cause the death of the infant's parents, Sheldon Tinker Sr. and Jeffrina Sweeting. According to police reports, around 3 a.m. on Monday, a man had just arrived home when he was approached by a male armed with a handgun. Police say the gunman then forced his way inside the single-room residence and fired several shots before fleeing on foot. The infant was pronounced dead on the scene while his parents were taken to hospital in serious condition. As Gomez informed Davis that he was not eligible for bail and was not required to enter a plea, the defendant lowered his head and began to shake it from side to side. Gomez told Davis that his case will be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court by way of a voluntary bill of indictment. She then asked Davis if he had anything he wanted to say. He replied, "I have no knowledge of what they're charging me for." Davis was then remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections. He will return to court on October 26, 2017. Davis then wept openly in court as CDU officers placed him in handcuffs to lead him outside of court. Reporting for our news, I'm Giorgio Bain.
Though the country managed to dodge another downgrade by international credit ratings agency Moody's last week, Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas John Roll says the Bahamas has a long way to go on the road to economic recovery. Jasmine Brown reports.
Roll says that rating proves that the economy is on the rebound. However, he says real improvement will not be felt until the tourism sector improves.
But generally speaking, the economy is starting to improve, and it frankly needs to show a lot more improvement, which will happen when you see a lot more of the hotels back in operations.
Roll made the comments moments after addressing the Rotary Club of Southeast Nassau this afternoon. He pointed out that based on the Bahamas' dependency on tourism, it's likely the economic boost everyone is hoping for will not happen until those troubled hotels and resorts get back on track.
There are some rooms in Providence that are not yet in operation, and then you have a huge chunk of rooms in Grand Bahama that are offline. So that's partly reflecting the fact that even though things are improving, mildly, there are still some constraints.
As for the Bahamas avoiding a downgrade by the International Credit Ratings Agency on Friday, Roll called it a positive for the country. However, Moody's did change the country's economic outlook from stable to negative. Former State Minister for Finance Michael Halkitis said earlier this week that he welcomed the rating and noted it appears the ratings agency is taking a wait-and-see approach for the fiscal plans of the new Minister administration. Roll says it's a common move.
If they think you have to show some improvement, that they would give you an outlook to signal the direction that you need to work. So what Moody's has said that you have a negative outlook, and the goal for the government or any country would be to get that outlook to change to stable, positive, or similar.
Roll adds that it appears the ratings agency is keeping a close eye on the fiscal reforms announced by the government.
And it also gives the sovereign an opportunity to to make corrections. So I think that's partly what's coming out here, and recognizing that we've signaled that corrections will be made.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Bahamas Power and Light could now be facing legal action. This after the attorney of 3 employees who were terminated recently asserted there were no legal grounds for their dismissal. Hi, Joaquin reports.
The line staff came to me about their dismissal. They gave me an account of what had happened.
And from that discussion, Wayne Monroe QC says the 3 BPL line staff fired last week deserved to be kept on the job. He said for starters, they weren't really told the allegations being made against them.
That is important because there is an industrial agreement between their union and BPL that if you are suspected of something, you ought to be suspended, and to be told why you're being suspended. You're supposed to have the allegations made to you. You're supposed to be given information to permit you to answer, to know what the allegation is, and you ought to be given an opportunity to answer. From what I have been told, that did not happen.
BPL's chairman, Darnell Osborne, says the findings of that Ernst & Young audit into a nearly $2 million fraud scheme cannot be revealed as yet because the matter is still under police investigation. When the 3 were fired, the termination letter of one stated that the company had determined that based on the findings of the investigation, the company had reasonable and honest suspicion and belief that they were complicit in committing a fraud against the company, resulting in substantial financial losses. And now our news team understands the suspension of 2 BPL managers has been extended. This, as the company says, it is in the final stages of firing more employees. But as for the 3 terminated line staff,
and so we say that there was a breach of the procedure, which would make their termination not only wrongful but unfair in the terms of the Employment Act.
And now the trio, according to Monroe, is seeking legal action. Monroe said they're going to the Supreme Court with several arguments. One, that their appeal was never heard by the Industrial Council.
And in another portion, it says that you go through this grievance process and your matter goes to the Industrial Tribunal. So that's a conflict, that's an inconsistency, and we need the court to say how in the nature of this industrial agreement, what is your method of resolving this dispute? And then we also are going to be putting to the court that on the face of the document and the face of what has happened, there hasn't been compliance with the industrial agreement, and as a result, the termination should be rescinded.
For our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Schools throughout the country are preparing to welcome thousands of students back to classes. April Sands takes a look at those preparations.
Well, for some, it's back to school tomorrow, but for one particular school, they're welcoming their students back with a bang.
Well, nearly 1,700 students of the Queens College School will walk into classrooms starting tomorrow. It's just one of the many schools that are preparing to be back in session this week. But just what does it take to prepare for all those kids? We spoke to the principal of Queens College, Andrea Gibson, who told us the school's little secret that has worked for the past 7 years.
So every year we train new persons who come to Queens College to work either in the office, on the facilities team, in the classroom. Anybody who joins the staff, they're introduced to the 7 habits of highly effective people and how you implement that through a lead-in process, which starts with the preschool children through to grade 12.
It's the school's ritual to push all the staff members for professional development and leadership development using the tools from this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The school attributes the book to their high-level performance throughout the recent years of its success.
And the school that consistently outperforms other schools in terms of student achievement. So last month, when we went to Government House with the All Merit and the Merit Scholarships, most of the recipients were from Queens College. Last year, most of them were from Queens College. And, our performance is just, the students are really performing well. Teachers work hard. They've been in for the last 2 weeks trying to transform their classroom because you have to take it down at the end of the year so we can paint and do all of those things. So they start afresh again.
Teachers are currently preparing their classrooms for the new school year, ripping down everything from last year and putting up everything new for this year. Leona Blair, an 11th grade homeroom teacher, has themed her classroom into a real live lighthouse. She also explains that the 7 habits of highly effective people are implemented as a lifestyle for her students.
They have to plan, set goals, all right? Begin with the end in mind. Know what their goal is, when they want to achieve those goals. And so we allow them to state their goals, state when they want to do it, and there's a process we call the 4DX, which talks about all the things that they have to do in between, track their progress and all of that.
And for those of you still preparing to send the little ones to school, Janae's uniform store may be a place to consider, providing uniforms for over 100 schools on the island for the past 23 years.
Well, we have been working with the Great Commission. We give them a special discount so they can help kids. We try to do it through that organization. The police have come to us where we've given kids uniform because their parents cannot afford it and they want to make sure get them off the street. We work with the Urban Renewal Band, the Urban Renewal Program. So we have a lot of charities.
Reporting for our news, I'm April Sands.
And still to come on our news, the tourism minister discusses the future of a Grand Bahama property, plus BPL revives a canceled program. So stay with us.